Something is happening on our country roads that no one talks about openly. Black trucks with no identifying marks or license plates drive through remote areas in the dead of night. But these are not ordinary government vehicles. They are modified to transport things that no one is supposed to see. They follow specific, carefully planned routes, always avoiding major highways and staying out of the range of speed cameras. What's the official story? They don't exist. No records, no documentation, no acknowledgement of their existence. But people see them, and what they observe adds up to a disturbing and frightening story. These trucks follow a strict route, are always escorted by security vehicles, and always maintain complete radio silence. They appear in remote areas, on roads that most people never use, at times of day when, in theory, no one should be awake to witness what is happening. Today, I'd like to explain what they're actually used for. The first story comes from someone who lives near Yellowstone National Park. I hesitated for a long time about whether to send this letter, but what happened just won't let me rest. By the end of this story, you might decide that I've lost my mind, but I swear that everything I'm about to tell you happened exactly as I remember it. I live near Gardner, Montana, right at the northern entrance to Yellowstone. It's the kind of place where you get used to having nature right next door. Moose graze in your yard, bears might wander onto your porch, and so on. But lately, something unusual and strange has been happening here. It all started 4 or 5 months ago. I had trouble sleeping, so I would often stay up late on the porch with a cup of coffee, trying to relax. That was when I first noticed those trucks. They weren't the usual trucks that transport livestock or equipment, but rather huge coal-black trucks with no identifying marks whatsoever. They resembled military vehicles but had a somewhat menacing appearance, reinforced sides, heavy-duty suspension, and no windows. I first saw one of them well past midnight. It was moving along an old service road that runs around my property, a road that nobody uses anymore. I caught a glimpse of it through the trees, but I had an uneasy feeling that it didn't belong there. A smaller SUV was following right behind it, as if escorting it. Both cars had their headlights dimmed, and they moved almost silently, which is unusual for such large vehicles. Over the next few weeks, I began to notice a pattern. They appeared about every 2 weeks, always at midnight, and always on the same road. They had never driven on the main highway or even on the gravel roads that most locals use. Their actions were deliberate and cautious, as if they didn't want to be noticed. And then came the night that changed everything. It was around 3 o'clock, and I was fast asleep when a deafening crash woke me up. The sound was so loud that the house shook as if lightning had struck right outside my window. The first thought that crossed my mind was that a tree had fallen or that a landslide might have blocked the road. I put on my boots, grabbed a flashlight, and went outside to see what had happened. The scene that unfolded before my eyes still seems unreal to me. One of those black trucks was lying on its side, right at the turn where the access road curves around my property. The SUV was parked a short distance away, its headlights cutting through the clouds of dust. There were people all around, 6 or maybe more. They were dressed in black uniforms without any logos and something resembling bulletproof vests. They also had weapons, large caliber assault rifles. The back of the truck had been cut open and a massive steel cage fell out. It was enormous. At least 10 feet long and 6 feet tall, with reinforced bars that looked as if they could hold even a grizzly bear. But they hadn't. The cage was bent out of shape and whatever had been inside was gone. At first I thought they were transporting livestock, but then I noticed tracks leading away from the pen. They looked almost like human footprints, but they were too big. I froze in place, crouching behind the fence, and watched as these people frantically tried to cordon off the area. And then I heard a sound coming from the woods. It was a low, guttural sound, almost a growl, but not quite. There was a strange metallic undertone to it. Everyone turned toward the sound, raising their weapons and shining their flashlights toward the line of trees. Then the sound rang out again, but louder this time. What happened next was pure chaos. One of the men shouted something I couldn't make out, and the others opened fire on the forest. Not just a couple of shots, but whole bursts, as if they were trying to take the tank out of action. The flashes from the gunshots lit up the trees, and for a split second I saw it. This creature, whatever it was moving through the trees faster than anything I had ever seen. It was hunched over, but its limbs were too long and thin. In the flash of the cameras, its skin looked pale, almost transparent, and its eyes glowed like those of an animal. It was as if they were looking right through me, even though I was hidden. The creature let out a piercing scream that made my ears ring. That sound was unlike anything I had ever heard before. A mixture of static, the screech of metal, and pure rage. It darted deeper into the forest, and the people rushed after it, disappearing into the darkness. I stayed where I was, too scared to move until the shooting finally stopped. About 20 minutes later, the men returned and, using a winch, righted the overturned truck, threw a tarp over the whole mess, and drove off at high speed as if nothing had happened. By morning, there was no trace left of what had happened, no tire marks, no debris. It was as if they had erased the incident from reality. I still feel uneasy. Late at night, I hear strange sounds, muffled thuds and low vibrations. Several neighbors have also mentioned strange occurrences, missing livestock and mysterious lights in the forest. But around here, no one likes to meddle in other people's business. Everyone minds their own business. But I can't shake the feeling that something much bigger is going on, and I'm sure those trucks are headed for Yellowstone. There's enough wilderness there to hide everything they don't want the public to see. And after what I saw that night, I'd bet my life that they're transporting something we're not supposed to know about. Let me know if you'd like me to mark the location where this happened on a map or provide more detailed information. I haven't told anyone else about this, and to be honest, I don't know if I should, but I figured that if anyone would take this seriously, it would be you. The following story, from someone else, is even more frightening. A strange incident happened to me in mid-August, around the 12th this year, not far from Panama City, Florida. And ever since then, I just can't get it out of my head. I work as a contractor and specialize in repairing industrial cryogenic freezers. The kind you sometimes see in large medical laboratories or specialized clinics. But in my entire career, I've never come across a machine like the one I had to repair that day. It all started when, around 6:30 a.m., I received an alarming call from an unknown number, which isn't unusual since my business card and contact information are widely circulated in various circles. People call me when their standard corporate support services either don't answer or can't get to the site quickly enough. But this call was different. The person on the other end of the line sounded almost panicked. He said something like, "Listen, we've heard that you're the best local expert on specialized cryogenic systems. We have an emergency with the transport unit and we need you to come right away." He didn't give any details. He just insisted that I keep it a secret and come alone. I've had a few confidential assignments where companies didn't want their problems made public, but this case was beyond the pale. Someone gave me directions to the parking lot. I'd driven past that area many times, but I'd never really stopped behind those warehouses because there was nothing interesting there except for trucks. When I arrived there, I immediately noticed something strange. A completely black semi-trailer with no identifying marks, about 53 feet long. There was nothing to indicate which company it belonged to. There were no license plates that I could easily make out either. 2 black SUVs were parked next to it. Note that this happened in broad daylight around 8 a.m. and the guys around him looked like they were from some kind of security service. When I walked up, a tall guy with a short haircut came up to me and told me to turn off my phone and leave it in the car for safety reasons. To be honest, I thought about refusing, but there was something so intense about the way he spoke that I just did as he asked. He led me over to the trailer and introduced me to the man who had called me. And that person essentially said, "We're in a very difficult situation and can't contact the manufacturer or go through official channels because we're on a very tight deadline, and the entire system is displaying an error code. The temperature is dropping rapidly, and we need your help to stabilize it." Then they opened the trailer, and I noticed that it didn't look like a typical refrigerated trailer for transporting frozen foods, and I immediately realized that it was designed to reach extremely low temperatures. It was definitely below -100 degrees Celsius. The interior surface was lined with some kind of special insulation. It looked like something out of the cryogenic laboratories at NASA's Johnson Space Center. And the smell was sharp and metallic, with a strange, cold chemical undertone that can only come from special cryogenic refrigerants. In the past, I've worked with several state-of-the-art liquid nitrogen systems, but never with a mobile unit of this size and complexity. What struck me most were the enormous battery racks. These weren't standard lead-acid batteries, nor even typical lithium-ion truck batteries. They looked more like industrial power supplies, possibly custom-made. Rows of batteries were arranged along the upper corners and in the lower compartments, integrated with a vast system of cooling pipes and multi-stage refrigeration units. The system had numerous backup circuits, as if it were prepared for any failure scenario, but it had neither brand name labels nor manufacturer's plates, just a bunch of serial numbers. I was asked to reboot and recalibrate the entire system. The readings on the displays indicated that the temperature had risen above the set point, and it appeared that it was supposed to stabilize at -70 or lower. That alone led me to believe that something requiring incredibly low temperatures was being stored here. I tried to ask them about the cargo, solely to better understand how to repair it, but they cut me off, saying they weren't authorized to discuss the details. I realized it was best not to press the issue, because the tension in the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I know quite a bit about cryogenic systems, so it didn't take me long to realize that the problem was with the refrigerant flow in the lines. The pump that circulates the cryogenic liquid was partially seized, so I drained the liquid through an external valve, which wasn't easy because the drain valve was blocked by some kind of heavy protective panel. When I opened it, I noticed that the liquid itself looked strange, cloudy and almost shimmering in the light. It was unlike any typical mixture of liquid nitrogen or liquid carbon dioxide I had ever dealt with. In other words, if it had been liquid nitrogen, it would have evaporated immediately in the Florida heat, but this substance remained in place, as if it had a higher boiling point, which contradicts the properties of liquid nitrogen. Whatever it was, it had either been patented or was still in the experimental stage. They made me work for almost 4 hours. During that time, I caught snippets of conversation from the staff members who were keeping their distance but were nervously milling about. They never spoke to me directly, but I heard references to a storage facility and to the situation getting out of control. At one point, I saw a guy in a suit get out of the passenger door of the SUV and speak quietly with one of the workers, glancing nervously in my direction. I couldn't make out the details, but my intuition told me that something much more serious was going on here than just a malfunction in the cryogenic truck. In any case, I started up the system and it began lowering the internal temperature to -70 again without displaying any error codes. I told them they really should thoroughly purge and inspect the system as soon as they reached their final destination, but they brushed me off. I made them sign my bill, which, by the way, was the strangest part. They signed with a single initial and handed me a thick, plain envelope filled with cash. Usually my clients pay with a corporate check or a credit card, but this felt more like a bribe to keep me quiet, and as soon as I was done, I was essentially kicked off the premises. One of the guys walked me to my car and waited until I drove off. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw them locking up the trailer. Everything happened so quickly and secretly that I got the feeling I had intruded on some kind of top-secret facility. That evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unusual about that trailer. The only reason such consistently low temperatures might be required is for the transport of special biological or perhaps exotic materials. But this immediately raises the question, why do this in an unmarked truck with a secret security detail? I've repaired quite a few pieces of cryogenic equipment for laboratories, but they've never had any suspicious teams in black SUVs standing guard. And the fact that the liquid turned out to be neither ordinary liquid nitrogen nor any standard refrigerant had me racking my brain over it for weeks. You know, I've heard stories that some government agencies or private defense contractors transport unusual biological cargo. Some even say that these might be the remains of aliens or unknown life forms that are being transported across the country. I usually dismiss this as internet folklore, but after this incident, I'm no longer so quick to brush off such rumors. I'd bet my entire toolbox that the truck was carrying something that no ordinary medical lab could handle. Maybe it was some kind of secret organism, or maybe some kind of top-secret device. I told my wife a toned-down version of what had happened, mainly so she wouldn't worry, but she could tell I was scared. The next time I was in that area, I drove past the same warehouse sometime in early September, and the parking lot was almost empty. It looked like the building had been abandoned. There were no signs of the truck or anyone else. I have no idea where they went or who they were. I'm writing this to you because your channel covers strange phenomena, the cover-up of facts, and this whole realm of unusual events. If anyone can appreciate the significance of a random contractor stumbling upon something he shouldn't have seen, it's you. You don't have to believe me, but I guarantee that I'm willing to take any polygraph test regarding this incident. I don't think I'll ever get an honest answer about what that trailer was carrying, but I can't shake the feeling that I was just a small cog in a much larger operation. Just accept it as it is. Part of me hopes I'll never get a call like that again, but another part of me is consumed by a painful curiosity to find out more. All I can say is this. If you ever hear rumors about some inexplicable cargo being secretly transported through Florida, it might have something to do with what I saw.